Welcome to the B2B Breakthrough Podcast. I'm your host, Sierra Cristo.
I think the mentality you have to have is being an adaptable mindset and being able to pivot quickly in the world of business and definitely in global supply chain. And so it's through chaos that you can be able to develop opportunities, to be able to say, hey, we got our back against the wall on this one. What are we going to do to figure out? And, you've had many of these situations. I mean, how many times did we hear about during the pandemic when, there wasn't these availability of PPE or masks, and then there are people in their garages now all of a sudden making masks and doing things. I mean, the chaos, there's no opportunity. We still have a need. Everybody figures it out, right? And they start to make things in the way that they need to. And, we've definitely felt and seen this during this recent time with all of the tariff conversation. And the disruptions that were happening in the global economy due to tariffs, where, I spoke a lot about this in some conferences about 5 ways to manage this and in a way that could be opportunistic, right? And so when it came to tariffs and duties, which everybody was, discussing and wanted to know more about how to work through this, my positioning was, yes, it's difficult, but it's not unsolvable. And there are ways to move forward. So what I talked about is I talked about things like absorption, who absorbs tariffs, whether it's suppliers or customers or the brands themselves, deferring tariffs. How do you go into some creative mechanisms to essentially take on tariffs, but defer the costs of them by essentially working through the shipping schedule, working through bringing them into U.S. bonded warehouses, and then only paying tariffs when you pull goods out. This from a cash flow standpoint. Terms and conditions, working hand in hand with your supplier. If you've been working with them for years and years and years and say, hey, listen, tariffs are expensive, so we need to work on how frequently I can pay you, or what my upfront deposit looks like, or my final deposits look like, and work through the cash flow because I'm going to have an upfront expense of these tariffs. So I need to reduce my cash flow, make more sales, and then I can pay you in arrears, terms and conditions. These are things that happen, challenge is the mother of invention, right? So we come up with these things. And then you have other operational opportunities such as pricing. So this is where we go back to that discussion of saying, we never looked at it before, but we've been underpricing our product for years. Now's the time to tout the hidden benefits and so on and increase our costs to not only offset the tariffs, but more goal set to what our product should really cost. Or now's the time for us to look at cost engineering. We always made it with material A. We always thought about making it with material B. Let's make it with material B. It's not inferior. It costs less than material A does. And that differential in the cost structure will help us offset some of these additional expenses, such as some of the tariffs. So again, this scenario of through the chaos, therefore increases the opportunity. And you're increasing your pricing, you're reducing your cost structure, you're looking at your business in a way because you haven't in the past because you didn't have those challenges. And we get into this mentality of if it ain't broke, why fix it type of thought. And we reduce the ability of efficiencies or streamlining or cost effectiveness or capabilities. And then finally, the last one is alternative supply chains, like we discussed before. Is this the time that we really think about other parts of the world or other parts of the way to do this? And may even be in the same part of the world, just not with supplier A. So with supplier B or C, because they're just as good, but they're 20% less. Their time frames are better. We were always nervous to make the shift. Maybe now we make the shift. And it helps us offset other things. So, you're consistently looking at ways to mitigate and develop the opportunities through chaos. You just have to be willing to pivot and have an open mind and be able to look at how are we going to restructure a business. And that can be scary for some businesses because they've done it a certain way for so long and they just don't want to take any kind of risks. But sometimes, again, when your back is in the corner is when you got to know how to fight your way out.